The Nature of Predators, Book 2, Chapter 92. Memory transcription subject, Taylor Trench, human colonist. Date standardized human time, March 18th, 2161. Gress and I had transcripts of the Krev Consortium's database. We had their versions of ourselves amongst the robot army, living in a glossy, falsified reality, or trapped as puppets on a string. My life had been miserable enough without reckoning with the idea that someone out there, a Taylor, existed, who never even got my slightest glimmers of happiness and growth. There would be me, who was reset from knowing that Earth had survived, and that he found someone who loved him, warts and all. There was an instance, perhaps more than one, of myself who truly existed, only to suffer. I saw how the knowledge had driven Gress mad, especially once he considered that everyone he'd loved or cared about in any capacity could be in the same predicament. Could I handle someone who was him down to every memory and mannerism being placed through simulated pain, and leave them to such a fate? The only way to stay sane was to affirm that it wasn't real Gress or Taylor, just an imitation to mess with us. If they could produce infinite robots to toy with us, then we had to be prepared. Nothing could distract us from saving the real Lekka and destroying the imposters pressed to Casey's internal service. What gives me assurance is that the actual Taylor, Gress, and Lekka won't exist anymore. We'll be overrun if we don't end this all. Who has the right to create a person based on my private thoughts? My fucking brain. It'll be okay. You couldn't reach her because they took down the comms, and they'll be surveilling her anyway. Any Krev device isn't worth shit. I sucked in a deep breath as our rescue shuttle continued to lurch towards the upper atmosphere of Avor. I still remembered the first time I'd seen the vista of this planet. Of course, we're going to Nevi's home first. How do we find Lekka if she's not there? We should have a plan. Gress grabbed my shirt collar, pulling me towards him with an intense look in his eyes. The plan is to stay until we find her, damn it. We check the school, the supermarket, run through the streets. I'm not leaving without my daughter. The UN are going to rescue as many people as we can, Carla jumped in, trying to soothe the Krev. How would you know if she got on a different rescue shuttle, though? Lekka should have a father, since she had a good one. Taylor can tell you what it means to have two loving parents back in his life. Lekka would want you to stay safe. What if I was left without her? What if we're not quick enough? I can't live with that. I carefully lifted the claws out of my fabric, biting my lip. None of this is your fault. You've seen what blaming yourself can do through your lure and my own. Living with the guilt of my failures made me miserable. You told me I deserved better, and your words mean enough to me that I believed you. I'm telling you the same thing now. Fault isn't the point, Taylor. It's about the outcome. And I saw this one coming months ago. I saw it and couldn't convince anyone. Couldn't convince you. That's my real failure. When I could have stopped this from ever happening. The consortium signed a treaty with the UN on my watch. What the consortium did is crazy, so it sounds crazy when you say it. Nobody would have sold the truth to the SC without proof. It's telling how discerning you are to be able to read them. I knew that you were under a lot of stress. And goodness gracious, I know how that clouds my judgment. You're stronger and more tenacious. I should have trusted you to be better than me. Carla raised her beak with indignance. Enough already. What matters is that we're better than them. I don't care who's better than who. When we've all mucked it up in one way or another, we're getting the civvies out before we drop any bombs. Plenty of time, you hear? Heard and disagreed with, Gress muttered, sounding like a madman. The humans, the kind, gentle, adorable primates, they'll wait all right. The consortium won't waste any time. When you shut down their little army with the EMP and hacktivism, the drones approved, the defenses all around Avor, that crazy cage that insulates our home, it can be turned around. They'll do your work for you. Rescue us at your own peril. As much as I wanted to argue with Gress, experience had taught me to believe that there was some validity to his forecast. The cage sealed around Avor, but cyber weapons demolished their defenses and made it easy for humanity's guns to punch the spaceship-sized hole in the shell-walled barricade. I stared at the fires within the atmosphere of the orbital ring and watched as UN shuttles diverted to lift civilians off of there. Those would be the easiest rescues. I could see green bodies walking to our ships before they'd even touched down. My binocular eyes peered closer at the scene around me, trying to turn the dial up for my logical deduction. I wanted to see what the consortium's plan was to exterminate their own people in a hurry. I was searching for proof to validate Gress's beliefs, because I knew his ability to see through the noise and confusion exceeded my own. I trusted his judgment. As a hostage negotiator, he'd honed his senses of other beings' true intentions to save lives. If anyone could make right calls for lack of security, it was him. The orbital protection would be present on every world and could be remote controlled. It would be a solid plan. The cage is shut, and that's their last line of defense. How could we see the Krev attempting to weaponize it against their own people? It was by looking at sensors, just as I'd been taught in Radai's military bridge training, that I saw what shutting the cage was meant to do to the surface. While it could provide artificial sunlight and temperature regulation when sealed, to preserve the populace, the Krev weren't worried about the flesh and blood beings they wanted to preserve. The temperature on Avon had plummeted to the point where it was meant to freeze out the people, forcing any survivors to hole up underground. I had to assume, for Greg's sake, that Lekka was down there. If they went deep enough to escape the unsurvivable frigidness, that meant the robot army holed up below, which the UN intended to bury, might be insulated from any digital attacks. The populace was being pushed into a synthetic legion's authoritarian grasp. Spacesuit armor on. Temperatures are continuing to plummet below. And it's getting to spacewalk levels of freezing way the fuck too fast, our squad leader announced, shortly after my realization struck. His words sounded so human that it was difficult to believe that I was following a Vendel into battle. Power grids got cut by them. I don't feel optimistic about finding too many survivors up top. Chris wept at the news, coming worryingly close to shoving the sharp points of his claws into his eyes. Lekka! They had a small stretch of time to get to safety, I soothed the Krev. We'll look for her. There could be some people who found ways to make it, gathering around the heat source that they got online, or there could be some civilians alive on the surface. As if to refute my argument, the Krev drones wheeled away from the UN fleets, sauntering in. Just like Gress predicted, the military craft began deploying antimatter bombs against their own populace in gratuitous quantities. Nothing was left up to chance in ensuring that Avol's surface was a fatal wasteland. Any orbital rings still standing were obliterated, hurling shrapnel all around the globe and cutting rescue efforts short. The Krev didn't want any people to get off-world, which was just spiteful. They could still have their fucking robot slave empire if they just let the real people go and dipped. No fighting required. No! Gress screamed. As I tried and failed to console him with a touch, I could feel horror enveloping me, watching how heartless these bastards truly were. All we got was a few ships off these rings. My God. Carla's eyes glowed with sympathy. Every time I'm seeing a glassing, I hope it's my last one. The fact that I've seen and been a party to so many haunts me. I'm sorry that Avar is the latest addition. The Vendel squad leader's nose twitched. Well, shit. Now there definitely is no point looking for survivors surface side. Aval's one cold, lifeless rock, and what a damn waste it is. We needed to insert our asses underground in a hurry, before we get buried like we meant to do to them. All that might stop more bombs pelting down is that they'd be burying their fucking robots, if they bring the roof down on our heads. They'll have to fight us on the old-fashioned way, I murmured, reaching for my rifle instinctively. Lekka could be underground, Gress. We're looking for her. Saving everyone we can is the best. The only chance that we have that she might live, okay? Don't give up. Gress hugged me until I pried him off to force him to don our spacesuits. It's hopeless, Taylor. We're too late. And there's no telling what waits down there. I have to go, but you don't. Just let me save you like I couldn't save her. You should turn back and go live the life that you want with your human family, who are still very much alive. I do wish for you to have what you want, away from me. All I want is to keep you safe. So that's not called abandoning you or putting distance between us. The life I long for is with us all together. I can't bear to see you hurting and losing yourself, because you're the man, the hero, the companion, the father I adore. I want this galaxy not to be so fucking unfair to people like us. I want to make this right for you. It's time we got some mercy from a high for a change. I agree, but I know better than to expect anything to go well. In or out of the consortium, it's all just infinite darkness. I steadied myself, knowing that the predators of terror were going to face the menace head on. I was one of them. Then we'll be the light. Someone has to be. The Sapien Coalition, spearheaded by humanity and our oldest allies, pressed with hunger towards the hostile drones who had assaulted Avor. However, the enemy had already dispensed thousands of warheads from orbital range without any delays, with devastating effect. The consortium would contest our forces now with their full attention, and the damage would be done. There was no stopping what had been unleashed before we had a chance. My fists clenched with fury, blinded by a burning rage at the thought that they tried to wipe Gress's family away. It boiled my blood that they'd hurt the alien I loved. I remember the agony and heartbreak I'd felt when I believed Earth had been glassed. I intended to avenge this atrocity for Gress if I could do nothing else. I was turning to wrath and vengeance one more time, only not for myself this go around. Humanity's best hope at victory was that our cyber weapons could access their remote control back doors, which they'd use to steer the fleet back in our space away from Radine's orders to attack the remnants. The mechanism was believed to be deep underground, with a robotic legion lurking in the depths. Deploying the United Nations cyber weapon in a last resort on foot might let it shut the consortium ships everywhere down, if we could get close enough to their center of operations. This went beyond just praying that Lekka was alive, and that we could ferry her to safety. I didn't know what was happening to other worlds at this moment, but the enemy had shown that they had no regard for life. It was my singular goal to succeed in ensuring that these monsters couldn't hurt any planet like this ever again. End of chapter. I'd quickly like to thank our Tier 5 channel members, Casper Arnholtz, John Creighton, Manatharia, 050, Dragzoon WRE, and Elijah Silvercross. Thank you very much.